public education is funded poorly in Texas. 90% of the people who are coming out into our job market to keep Texas strong and as an economy are coming out of public schools. We believe 100% vouchers are bad policy.
Produced by Podcast Architects.
Welcome back to another episode of The Path Forward. We're here in Dallas at TexEdCon, and I have a very special guest, Amy Dodson from Raise Your Hand, Texas.
Good
Welcome.
morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. It's Friday morning. We're sitting around looking at across the exhibit hall. It's a beautiful day to see some public ed and just engage. I love it.
You know, we're stationed by the buses, so I got a little anxiety thinking that we're going to have to go do car rider duty. As a former principal and superintendent and teacher, it just gives me a little anxiety about the buses running
You're
on
looking
time.
for the cones. You're looking for the bullhorn.
I'm looking for my walkie and my watch and making sure, hey, we got to get them.
Where's first grade? First grade, come up. Next up, second grade. No, ma'am, sit down.
They got to roll.
That's right.
Count them, and let's get them out.
Right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah, a little flashback there. But let's talk Raise Your Hand, Texas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, I'm very familiar with it, but for those that don't know, what is it? What's the mission, the vision, and how do you support educators?
I tell you what, I love to explain Raise Your Hand Texas to folks that are unfamiliar. And sometimes they think, oh, you're pretty new, right? It's like, no, back in 2006. So we've been around 17 years.
Has it been that long?
It's been 17 years. It's kind of hard to believe. But in 2006, kind of similar to today, honestly, a lot of negativity around public education, a lot of headline grabbing, about failures
Right.
and just things that we know as educators just were not true. And we needed to push back a little bit. And so Charles Butt and a group of engaged citizens, but led by Mr. Butt, founded Raise Your Hand Texas and said, we need someone to step up and step in the void for teachers and for students and for public education in general. And you ask about our mission. I always sum it up in our motto. Our motto is the future of Texas is in our public schools. And that's it. I mean, that
Absolutely.
is the key piece. We know that all of our business, our future doctors, our HVAC, our pilots, our lawyers, everybody. AI, everything. Our people out in the West Texas Permian Basin, drilling oil. I mean, you name it. 90% of the people who are coming out into our job market to keep Texas strong and as an economy are coming out of public schools. It's vital that we do the right thing for public schools. So Raise Your Hand Texas, we work in Austin, and then now with my role, we work across the state to get people engaged and to really speak up about public education for good legislation, good policy.
So what led you to be a part? I'm assuming, hey, I just want to do this and see what this is about. So.
It goes back. It's so funny. You know how there's just those intervening points in your life that you look back and go, wow, that was a God thing. Mm-hmm. In 2016, Raise Your Hand Texas decided to do a grant project for blended learning, which is a dynamic instructional redesign model. I spent years and years in higher ed, but had been in K-12 for a few years as an administrator and instruction. And so when that grant application came out, I went after it, and our district where I was one of the 5 original winners. And so we were a test site across the state, and then they sent me to Harvard. We have great programs where we send school leaders to Harvard for leadership training. By
the way, I could never get accepted. We'll talk about that
It was
later.
clearly an oversight. It was an oversight, Rick, clearly.
Mine got lost in the mail.
It did. In fact, I may have seen it. But they sent me to Harvard, and just a phenomenal it's not where you learn how to do something. Right. It's just about being a better leader. So I got really engaged with Raise Your Hand through that work. And then in 2019, Mr. Butt and the leadership at Raise Your Hand Texas said, you know what? If we're going to really effectively advocate for good things in Austin, we have got to get the perspective from the field. We need to be out in the field knowing and hearing and listening. And so they put together the regional advocacy program and hired folks that are specialists in our area. So for me, I'm West Texas, central to west. So I cover about 69 counties. I work with about 245 school districts.
Wow.
And chambers of commerce and parents and teachers and students and anyone who will talk to me, because everyone is impacted by public ed.
Absolutely.
So it's great. So that's how I got in, and I've been in fact, tomorrow is my 4-year anniversary. I was one of the original regional folks. So 4 years tomorrow.
Well,
is when we started.
congratulations.
Thank you. It's my work anniversary tomorrow.
Well, let's jump into some of the hot topics, right? And
there are a few.
Yes, they are. I've always been one that if someone says they have a better way or we can do something different and it's going to be more efficient or it's going to help kids, whatever the case, I'll listen.
Sure.
So there's this big movement for school choice, vouchers. And there's a lot of information, and it's hard to sometimes decipher which pieces are accurate, what's not accurate. From your perspective, how would vouchers affect public education?
It's really interesting. One of the reasons that Raise Your Hand was founded all those years ago, there were two topics that were driving a lot of that narrative. One was pre-K. We wanted pre-K. We know the data showed us that pre-K, strong pre-K, really helps. We know that. The other piece was vouchers. So this is not a new conversation.
No.
I mean, it's been around for a long, long time. And I think the unique benefit for us as Texans, we like to lead on everything, right? However, we can look around in other parts of the country and we can learn, we can be informed. And I think if you look around the country at voucher programs, there's a lot of data. None of it is really showing any improvement academically for students who are in voucher programs. We look at the financial impact and burden on states, even states that in the last year, with this new huge national push toward this taking of public money, which is what vouchers are, right?
Sure.
You take public money and
however
you
you boil it down.
However you boil it down, or whatever you call it, it comes down to taking public money that was collected in Texas constitutionally to go to public education and putting it to a private school. And so when you look around the country and look at other programs similar to what we would like, some people in this state would like to follow, it's very difficult to see where it is beneficial other than the people who are already in the private schools. It becomes a tax break. What we hope with a special session, you talk about hot topics, we've got a special session coming. What we really hope, we believe 100% vouchers are bad policy. Taking public money, giving it to an unaccountable private school that they're not going to take the same accountability measures, STAR. We can talk about STAR. They're not going to take that. They do not have to take or serve special ed students. They obviously do not have to they talk about parent choice. It really is the school's choice. The schools can make the decisions, no, you're too much of it, you're too difficult or too expensive to educate. Public schools have to do all those things, and we have open fiscal responsibility and accountability. Transparency. Thank you. And the local school boards, the best government's the closest to it. So local elected school boards, when parents have a concern, they can go right to their school board and have an engagement here. So it's bad policy in our opinion, and I hope we can change the conversation to, man, let's fund our schools. We've got $33 billion in surplus, and we walked away with not giving anything. No teacher raises, no increases to funding. So I hope that we're going to have a conversation around vouchers. Our position is bad policy, but let's talk about what we really need to do to help schools, and that's put the money that way.
So if I was going to argue the other side of it, right, has it been successful? What would I be pointing to say, hey, this works here, or this works, see the success of vouchers or funding public education in a different form? Does it work anywhere? Is there a model that's been pointed to that, hey, it's been knocking it out of the park?
I think that the best way to answer that question is if you look at Michigan State University, Josh Cowan, I believe is his name, did some research years ago, about over a decade ago, and started having the conversation about vouchers and he was a proponent, and he started looking at data and thinking, oh, this is a good model. So to your point about looking for some successes, if you follow him now, he is the strongest, largest, loudest anti-voucher person. Based on data. He said, I used to be in this camp, but now I'm looking at the data. This is decimating. This is decimating to public ed. It's unsustainable fiscally. It separates students, and you've got haves and have-nots, and it's a system that is not viable. And so I think that's the best answer there, is to look at someone who was a pro and who used data, and now is on the other side going, whoa, and a litany of information out there that can show and to point to the issue and how it's not successful and not sustainable.
So you mentioned accountability, and we're going into a new A through F, right? And as being a part of STAR and TAX and all of the iterations of accountability,
all the acronyms.
And I know as a teacher, as a principal, as a superintendent, how much emphasis we put into that, whether right-fully or wrongfully. It is what we do because it's what people say you are, right? How's that changing? It feels like the deck is being shuffled again for us to figure out.
It is, and they're changing the cards. We had old maid cards, and now we got Uno cards, and no one told us that we were switching the deck. It's like, okay, you're playing old maid, and now once scores are going to be released. By the way, we were really playing Uno, which it's kind of a stretch and it's laughable, but it's really not. I mean, they really have changed. To your point, your experience, and this. Students are not one day, one test.
No.
They're not, they can't be boiled down that way, nor can schools be boiled down that way. And, we need accountability. No one in education has ever said, don't hold us accountable.
Sure.
That's not it. I mean, we're teachers. We give tests all the time. I mean, this is part of the makeup and DNA. The iteration of education is about testing and moving and adjusting and learning.
Absolutely.
Right now, the situation we have is an accountability system that is supposed to be fair and transparent and communicate to communities and parents exactly what's going on.
Right.
But when you go and talk to parents, which we did, Raise Your Hand Texas just wrapped a 1.5 year work on Measure What Matters, which is about, let's just see, what do Texans think a good school is? And when you ask them and ask parents, they have no idea that elementary and middle school, so 3 through 8, there is no impact in that metric of the letter grade they're given that's not about STAR. None. It's 100% STAR based. So that's one day, one test on the backs of 8 and 9-year-old third graders on how they do on that one test. And parents they go, wait a minute, I thought this was telling me if my kid was safe, if my kid was happy, if they got fed, if they had all these things. None of that is a part. So one of the things that we have done, and I'll get to your question specifically, but is really talk about, let's de-emphasize the STAR. It's good. Let's have it. That's fine. We need a test, but let's de-emphasize that. Let's talk about all the things that schools do that they're required by law to do and should be doing well. So let's do that. Right now, the new system there's lawsuits. It's been pretty public. A lot of districts keep adding on every day to the lawsuits to TEA. And the situation was this: without warning and without any time to transition, the goalpost was moved.
Right.
They did not tell us what the metrics would be in order to get a certain accountability grade. They changed it. Did not tell us until after the tests were already taken. And on top of that, they changed the test. They ramped it up. They added all fully online. For some students, especially 3rd and 4th grade, 5th grade, this is the first time they've ever taken an online test. And now it's the one day, it's the one test, and that's going to go to their score. All these changes happening at the same time, which makes it very, very problematic. And then to top it off, for accountability for high schools, they changed the CCMR, the College and Career Military Readiness Standards, which is a big piece of high school, because high schools do have more than just the STAR test.
Oh, absolutely.
They've got other things, but the CCMR scores are based on the students that graduated a year ago. During the last few months, TEA has changed the measure that you can, in order to earn your letter grade or your portion of your letter grade from CCMR. They've changed those numbers based on students that graduated over a year ago. There is nothing schools can do. This is completely out of their hands, and it's going to impact them. So a lot of discussion around accountability right now.
Is it safe to say that schools are expecting lower grades?
Oh, yeah.
Why would we do that? Is that, I mean, I'm asking to speculate.
Yeah.
Is it political? Is it we're trying to figure out a better system? Is it, no, we really want to push growth?
Can it be all the above?
It can be.
I think that's the best answer. I'm not going to ever try to put myself in the mind of our public servants,
Sure.
our elected officials. I respect them and appreciate their service so very much. Who would want to be in politics? I mean, honestly, in this day and age, it's very difficult. So I will not put myself in their space. But I think all the above has to be a reasonable answer. I think we do want growth. Who doesn't? And that's the key. You talk about schools expecting lower grades. They are, and they're trying to get in front of this and talk to their communities and try to explain something that's very difficult to explain, that their students will show growth. Most of these schools are going to drop a letter grade. Their students have grown. They have done growth, which is what most people in the community, business owners, parents, expect. And yet they're going to have a lower grade. Trying to explain that to even to educators, but much less somebody walking around the street going, did you know your school went from a B to a C or from a D to an F? No, that's terrible. What's going on?
What are they doing?
Exactly. And the bottom line is they probably did a better job than they did last year, but someone changed the game and changed the rules after we started playing.
So the amount of pressure that teachers and educators are feeling, I mean, it's got to be immense, right?
Grist mill.
And I'm fortunate to be able to travel to other states and talk to other superintendents and view how the other half is living to some degree. But the constant is teachers are leaving the profession. Educators are leaving the profession. Superintendents are leaving the profession.
Mm-hmm. Crisis. They finally used the word crisis last summer.
Well beyond that. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And how do we help retain?
Sure. It's really funny. One of the most broadly quoted statistics on teachers leaving the profession was actually our sister organization, the Charles Butt Foundation. CBF does really rich polling every year on a lot of different things. And so the most widely quoted statistics in New York Times everywhere was 77% of teachers are seriously considering leaving the profession. Yeah. Well, good news. The newest poll, it went down. Now only 75% of teachers seriously, hey, we gained 2 points. We'll take it. It is. It's really, really tough. You know, as I talk to teachers and I talk to higher ed folks, they're doing teacher ed prep. We have this constant. Let's just lay it out.
Yeah.
They're not paid. I mean, we are as a state. I mean, teachers across the country are underpaid. We know that. This is not a uniquely Texas.
But Texas
situation.
is at the bottom.
Texas is at the bottom, exactly. Even though it's it's a national issue, it is a state issue. We are thousands of dollars behind. I think the number, and I could be incorrect, but it's $7,000 to $8,000 less than even the average nationwide. So teachers in Texas are paid far less. Health insurance, our teachers' health insurance premiums are horrible. They cannot keep up.
I have to say this. So, coming to the private sector, my insurance is so much better and so much cheaper and so much more responsive. The options, it was a shock to me that it was that vastly different.
Oh, the same with me, Rick. Same with me.
I mean, I was like, oh my God, this is
28 years in
ridiculous.
education. I walked out and I went, I'm sorry, what? I get vision? I can do this. In the great example, I've got two teachers in my region that I just love and adore. Both, they're two different school districts, husband and wife, over 20 years in education, both of them. They have two children. Health insurance is so expensive and cost prohibitive for them. Neither of their own children have health insurance. Neither of them. How is that possible? Two dedicated professionals, educated, well-trained, doing the work, and it's so expensive. So between insurance and pay, but we also if you go look at the headlines right now, it's hard to find a positive headline about education. It's just teachers this, and there are all these rumors and stories that come out, some of it national that gets put upon Texas teachers. And I think that is a huge drive out. In my area, we got a lot of, well, even in Austin, housing is an issue. When teachers are thousands of dollars below, they can't afford, and then housing through the roof, you can't afford to live.
So I want to give kudos to Austin ISD. I have some friends there, and that they are trying to build teacher housing, to do some things to help the gap, and it is a huge gap.
Well, who would want to go into this? You may go into debt in higher ed to get your certification to go do this. You're gonna get paid less, not have good insurance, and and the housing market is right now, at least in the foreseeable future, you'll never own your own house. How is that attractive? And people are gonna badmouth you and say you're doing this and that. I tell you what, Austin's finally doing it, and I'm glad they are. But this has been a problem in rural Texas for years. In the Permian Basin, I mean, places like Borden County and Lamesa and Odessa, they've been having to provide housing for staff for years because it's hard to get people out there. Pecos Barstow Toya ISD, out just to the west of the Permian Basin, they, many districts are landlords, but PBT has always had different housing options, but they broke ground last fall or this spring on a brand new 64-unit apartment complex that they're having to build to be able to take care of teachers. Your
capital projects are going to start.
Exactly.
Every district is going to start having to add that.
And that's more and more on schools we're putting. They already do all the litany of things we expect them to do, but now they have to be landlords because teachers don't have places to live.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, but that's how you recruit them. I mean, you have to retain them. You ask that question. You got to do those things.
We do a lot of work with public-private partnerships because of the need. School districts can't fund it. Universities can't fund it. So they're asking help to get creative and do alternative deliveries.
Yeah, creative.
And so you're seeing that spread. And the thing about business, so Texas is well known for business and industry, and
proud of it.
And the governor touts that, and rightfully so. I'm proud of that for Texas. But there's a disconnect between, do you think the businesses are going to keep coming here if our education system?
It's a great question.
How do we sustain that? They're going to all of the workforce is going to come from out of state if our public schools aren't supplying and aren't funded. There's a huge disconnect with that sentiment, and
It is. It's we're so proud of, and we should be. We're proud Texans, and I'm so grateful. Our business community is phenomenal in this state and growing, and we welcome them, and we welcome the new folks to Texas. We come join the family.
Absolutely.
The governor last week, rightly so, and grateful to it, acknowledged our Blue Ribbon schools, and one of the things he said was, we have great public schools because we provide them all the resources they need to be successful. And I would just push back on that a little bit and say, let's look at the numbers. We are in the bottom 10 in funding. Sure. I don't care what metric you use. Texas public schools are in the lowest schools states in the state. Public education is funded poorly in Texas. We have not given an increase to the basic allotment in over 4 years. 2019 was 2019 was the last time we raised the basic allotment, which is that fundamental piece where we pay for our gas, we pay for our food in the cafeteria. I had a student, you'll love this, as a former superintendent, I had a student on Monday, I told you I was teaching some classes out west, and a senior, when I was talking about what their issues, what do they get excited about, or what are they upset about, and one student, typical high school kid, the cafeteria. And I said, okay, well, tell me about that. And he said, they raised the prices. I'm paying $4 for my lunch this year. And it was just the perfect thing. I said, well, hang on a second, buddy. Can I tell you what might be behind that? Do you know that your schools haven't been given any more money to pay? I asked, how much do you pay at the grocery store? Are you paying more at the grocery store and at the gas pump? Yeah. Do you know your schools have got no more money to fill up the buses and to pay so they can't charge, they're not going to charge you. They're going to provide that service to you in terms of the bus, but if they have to raise the price in the cafeteria, they may have to. So we have got to truly commit to that. Put the resources, put the funding. $33 billion in surplus needs to be directed to pay our teachers if we're going to retain them and to take care of our schools.
I think I want to float this possible solution, right? And it's not an easy one.
If it's a good one, I'm taking it to Austin.
Oh, you can take it, because I am very, very passionate, love everything career and tech education. Love the innovation behind it. I think we need to do more to innovate. I think if we partnered with business, instead of just some here and there and career days and field trips, but if we integrated with business more heavily, right? Like there's internships, not just ribbon
true
cuttings.
Internship, yeah.
Internships. And the businesses are so interconnected with the schools. All of a sudden that changes the narrative in the field, right? Because all of those voters, all of those business owners, everyone has a stake, a vested interest, because not only is it in their community, but now they're potential employees.
Right.
There's a relationship. And I've seen that in small doses, but I think that could do a great deal of kind of bridging that gap, where people that are like, I don't have a stake in the game, or I really don't care, or hey, I just want to run my business and get tax breaks, and rightfully so, I get that. But if everybody is connected into the district in a different way, in an intimate way, I think some of that would start to change. I think some of the opinions or whomever is spouting, we need to do away with it. I think that could change.
I think we all want to go we're all looking for the same end goal, right? I mean, to your point, I mean, we want to be successful businesses, and these are our people. I think that's happening more and more. I think you're absolutely 100% right. I think we're seeing it more in the the larger communities, the urban areas, where perhaps at one point there was a disconnect between the schools and the business sector that needs to be, and I think it is really enhancing. I think there's some great work happening in Houston. There's some great work happening in the Metroplex area. For rural Texas, I think we've always kind of seen that that's a real need. And you look at some of the dynamic new CTE centers, to your point about the CTE, I mean, Amarillo, phenomenal, beautiful new center that they are really doing dynamic things. In Odessa, where I am, or where a lot of my folks are that I work with, the automotive industry has really gotten with them and donated old bays, to say, let's make sure we're doing auto tech. There's one, you can ask about retaining teachers. There's one district that I work with out west near the Permian Basin that their new CTE center, they put a woodworking area, like really craftsman, like construction trades. And one of the things they're doing is they are teaching and training their students how to build tiny houses. So it's a big deal, right? So they're building tiny houses, but their thought is when those tiny houses are built, some of them they'll sell as a to keep putting back into that program. The others they're going to put on land that the school district has to help house teachers. So it's really working together. I think there's a lot of creative things that could happen, but between CNA and HVAC and welding, and I mean, we really need in the Permian Basin, we need more people trained in oil field type things. I mean, just the basic thing. What is the driving economic market in a community, and how does the school work and partner with that? And the communication needs to be stronger. I think it's getting better, but it absolutely needs to get stronger.
It is. I would say that we need to evaluate how we sell things to students.
100%.
Because we see we were having a conversation after our Talis event about what we liked and that's all well. We like how we experience things.
Sure.
We think of school how we
back in the day.
Yeah, because that everybody does, right? But selling certain programming to 15-year-olds, to 14-year-olds, sometimes it doesn't resonate. And we're like, why is this not working? This is, a $120,000 job walking out the door with a certificate, and we can't figure out where the miss is. And I think sometimes it's who's the mentor, how are we selling it, and how do we make it digestible for students that they're going to be interested in.
And it has to go up, realistically, and you well know, any sort of change in the CTE, what's really need that dynamic, instant pivot change to create a program that's beneficial for the market right at that moment.
Yes.
Is sometimes difficult to execute because it still has to go through channels to have a curriculum made and the curriculum set up, and then to get funded, because bottom line, the schools, they can't just put a program into place and fund it out of their own pocket. They don't have a pocket like that.
But if the relationship with the industry is there, I work for Accenture. I guarantee you, if Accenture called TEA and said, "Hey, I've got an AI program that I want to implement in 6 months, and I'm going to dump $500 million into it because we need coding. We need." I bet we figure out a way. I bet TEA will figure out a way to make that happen very quickly.
I think you're right. I think those are the conversations that need to happen. I think it may happen locally, but I think you're right. I think that's the phone call. It's like, hey, we've got this, and if you've got that plan, put that forward.
Don't fire me over that. I didn't just get us on the hook
I
for $500
heard
million.
it's recorded. I don't know.
Please don't. But
you're right. I mean, the businesses can drive this. We need more engagement with business, top to bottom, east to west, north to south. We need the engagement, the communication.
Absolutely.
We need that at the local district level, and we need it at the state level. I mean, not just and in that positive, constructive way you just laid out, not a finger pointing or anything like that. That constructive, like, hey, this is something we need. You have our future employees. Let's work together to get this. That is.
It's all interconnected. Yeah. It's all, and if one sector, one portion of our community is suffering, the rest of it will suffer. And you may not see it overnight, but it will eventually erode. Yeah. So, okay. If someone wants to get involved with Raise Your Hand Texas, so they want to learn about Raise Your Hand Texas, where do they go? Who do they talk to? Can I give them your cell number?
Yeah, absolutely. My cell number is out there.
I'm joking.
Out there.
I'm joking. Don't put that on there.
It's on the website. You'll find it. Absolutely. We would love to. I mean, one of the things that I do as a regional director, and I have a whole team, we have a team that is across the state. There is not a community in Texas that does not have someone like me in it or accessible to it that serves that area. So a couple of different things. If you want to get involved and learn more about us, get white paper information about issues like funding, vouchers, accountability, we've got them all out there. You can go to raiseyourhandtexas.org. So raiseyourhandtexas.org. If you want to get engaged, like I said, you can find all sorts of information on the website, but you can also, right at the top of our website, there's a link that says get involved. Makes it super simple. We have a newsletter that comes out every Friday during the legislative session called Across the Lawn. We're very creative because our offices are across the lawn from the Capitol. We're right there. And then it doesn't go out regularly outside of session, but it does come out. And we want to make sure we keep it simple. 4 things you need to know and 1 thing you can do right this minute to help public ed. So that's there. And then if they want to be ready to act, we have the special session we mentioned coming up. This is critical. If you care about public education, we need to be paying attention to this special session coming up. The governor has not called it yet, but we're hearing he said this week in 2 weeks. So middle of October-ish. If you want to be able to take action to stand with public schools, with your teachers, with the 5.4 million children that are in our public schools, we have a text alert system like a lot of folks have. We only utilize that during session and I always say, when the house is on fire. It's not like, oh, this is what's happening, you should know. It's like, no, we need your voice right this minute. And you can join that very simply by using your cell phone and texting to the number 40649. And then your message should read, raise my hand, all together. So 40649, the words raise my hand. If you do that, that'll put you in our system in about less than a minute. And then you're ready to go. If we activate that, like, woohoo, we need your voice right this minute, it comes right to your phone, makes it super simple.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I had a great time.
It was great visiting. Thank you.
You'll come back, and maybe after session you'll come back and we'll see where we are.
Let's sit down and see where we are. I wish I had the crystal ball, but I hope it's better. We need to release some of that funding and take care of our teachers at our schools.
Absolutely.
It'd be great. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
All right.
Produced by Podcast Architects.